Julie does not remember any cave anywhere being in Surf City. There are no tall cliffs around the beach. The pebbled sand evens out into soil before it climbs up to any altitude at all. It is why amateur surf competitions were a Surf City staple long ago. More beach space. But she finds herself awake in a cave, tied down lightly by wet reeds against a tall, ominous rock. Not a cavish tooth such as a stalagmite or a stalactite. No. Though it is in the cave, the rock is not of the cave, barely the same color as the cavern floor. There is a suggestion of a dream in the back of her mind that she cannot reach nor puzzle before she awakens violently, and in awakening, stumbles out of her so-called chains. She expects someone to shout at. She waits, breathing heavily, looking around. But the cave is empty, at least of people. There are torches seemingly bolted into the cave walls that are pockmarked with age and shadow. It is a wide cave, but not too tall, and with seemingly no exit. It does not have a fetid or a still smell, but it is troubling in its contained nature. Julie is alone. The torches give off some heat, but not much, nor do they suffocate. She reaches back over her shoulder as she is wont to do. She reaches for a bow, her comfort in this world, only to find the motion greeted by nothing. No notch, no shaft, no arrowhead. There is no weapon. There is only her and the mirror. It would be strange, no matter what kind of mirror it is. It is a smooth, reflective thing that vaguely casts back the light of the torches, as though it is a mirror meant for more than casting light, but that does so out of obligation to its shining family members. Some thing seems to swirl in it, as though it is two pieces, with something sandwiched in the middle that is gray and viscous. The less affected person might think on it as a trick of the light, but Julie knows better. She peers around the mirror, but does not get very close. Standing back and away near that rock that she'd been fashioned on. It is no matter, though. The mirror itself is thick in its casing, impenetrable. It simply is in the cave with her. The mirror's housing is wood honed, but it's too solid to break off a piece with a human hand. It doesn't even seem to have any splinters on it or weathering. It is inlaid with designs in a much darker wood, but they are smooth, decorative. No runes, no mysterious summoning. Other than its own place in the universe and Julie standing before it, it is no mystery, it is just a mirror. Hello? She's not sure why she thought either the mirror or anyone would respond, though mortals often in such situations do tend to reach out to nothing, just in case. Louis Swan is also saying hello to a mostly unseen figure. The figure brings a cup of tea to his lips. It is old bone china, and there is no return in Louis's greeting. Louis opens his smile wide, and it is unearthly with too many teeth, more reminiscent of a goose than a swan, as his last name would suggest. The figure lets Louis talk, lets Louis brag. It's in a private place, and Louis likes to uplift himself. He shudders and shouts and gloats of the great triumphs of Louis Swan, of how even when Edgar denied himself the pleasure he loved so dearly at the cost of any fealty to Louis, that Louis still won in the end. Louis is not sure what happened to Barragomer, but his joy at having screwed over the mighty House of Black is vicious and cutting. And yet the unseen figure seems unimpressed. Morty, it simply croaks. Frustrated, but trying to channel their energy, Lewis Swan serves the figure in the shadow of themselves. Lewis's hand is dainty but swift, unfeeling whether the teapot itself is boiling warm or ice cold. The smoky figure sitting in the chair, as much as it can sit, seems to swirl in and out of existence a little, and only after the cup is full does something approximating a hand reach out gingerly. The smoky figure hesitates, not out of weakness, but out of trying to recall what a hand looks and feels like, and what a hand should do. Why do you want to be mayor then, child? What good would come of being a mayor if only of an ash heap? We don't need them, Lewis hisses out. I've proven the 5 lines mean nothing. It's a fever dream of a child to be so tied into familial bonds. That world no longer exists. New worlds always replace old. Ah, sniping out of jealousy. I remember jealousy, the gravelly voice says calmly. I am not jealous, Lewis says, and swipes his hand alongside the cup, causing it to fling and crash across the room, staining the deep blue rug dotted with green and white flowers. Dear little Lewis Swan, for your greed and your wants you seem to have forgotten some very vital things. Dream sand always comes with a cost. Its provision is no guarantee for success, and things in South City are much larger than you. At the end of it, I will control all. So why does it matter? Lewis asks, looking away, ashamed at knowing the shadowy figure has caught him in his emotions. He's given too much of himself away. The shadowed figure has won. It is the shadowed figure's turn to gloat. How is your father, Lewis Swan? A shadowy voice asks, husky, and now with merriment. And it approximates something like a laugh as Lewis turns their head down, afraid for the first time in a long time. And at first glance, Tourist Taffet appears someone like Lewis Swan, but first glances can, and usually are, deceiving. They both care deeply for their fathers, and at the same moment as Julie is looking in a mirror of nothingness and Lewis is looking in another, different type of mirror, one in the shape approximating a man, Tourist is writing his father a letter. There is a candle nearby when the letter is done, to burn and to send words to the man. He begins by addressing it to his dearest father, and in the page and a half to follow, the plot unfolds. Everything he's been working toward, everything his father was working toward as well. The seduction of Ben, watching Mace, turning Mace away from the town, of trying to control Mace's powers, to divest Mace of those powers. About medication, about blood, and of how now with Ben's blood he has enough to control them, their destiny, the outcome, all 3 of the Black siblings. The words butterfly spawn cause the pen to blot out and spill with seeming rage against the page, and he hisses at the very mention, even by his own hand. But his father must know, because his father would want to know everything. He was a scientist after all, and it is of utmost importance to know that Ben Black is no longer under the butterfly spawn's control, or will not be, when Truist has his say. Perhaps dead, but Truist is not certain. The scientific enchantment to the blood seems to have worked, and Truist has no shame. Granted, he did enjoy sleeping very much with 2 out of the 3 Black siblings. Baldness being not so attractive to himself, he'd never attempted to seduce Edgar. But if he'd wanted to, it would have been easy. And Edgar being so washed up and suggestive to VR would make him putty in truest hands. With the cologne, the aphrodisiac at his side, he could have had Edgar, but he chose not to. Every day now, he writes, he crows, he comes closer to uprooting the vile black family for his father, in honor of his father, in memory of his father. It doesn't matter. Soon it will just be complete, the infighting. He's sure Ben is still asleep from the weight of the pan, the heavy thing smashed against his head, and amusingly, its own family heirloom of some kind. He'd get the heirloom off the floor before Ben woke up, and then he'd get what his heart was truly after, or at least his father's heart, within good reason. What he doesn't know is that butterfly spawn heirloom, the necklace, with that magic and power it had been holding to keep Ben at bay, smashed now, just like the plans of all. Rage comes to the mirror, comes to Julie in the mirror. He does not scream now, he merely smiles, and he looks more like the man that was tacked up upon her wall for the ritual, less ghoulish, although that smile is too wide, and it is one that would put Louis Swan's smile to shame. She does not move when she first sees him. What's the matter? Rage's voice says, and there's a bubbling quality to the voice, unearthly, nearly underwater. Afraid? You again, she says. Me always. I'm your conscience. Rage winks, and even Rage has to scoff at the idea. I am your condemnation. You killed me. You were necessary, she counters. You could have taken Edgar instead, in theory, though that would have complicated many things. But it would not change where you have come. Where am I? She asks. Rage merely smiles. Oh, at the crossroads. We have heard your cries for freedom. Have been a good servant to us, Julie Cumberland, to what you did not know you were serving, but to something that wishes you well. You seek freedom. We seek freedom. We are the same. And you had to bring me to a cave to achieve your goals and mine. This is more than just a cave. It's an opportunity. Come, child, come. Rage extends their hand, though it does not appear to move out of the mirror, merely beckoning Julie forward. Closer. Who are you? Rage's head turns, a profile of his body on display. So many questions for someone so doomed. Is there any place worse than Surf City that you could go? Is there anything as heavy in your heart as how trapped you feel? Come and see, Julie Cumberland. Your reward is yours. You have the bravery to seek it. Eric is trapped. His body shivers now. Moss can only do so much against hypothermia and against the nutritional needs of the body, after all. His feet are fouled by soil and that which excretes. His eyes are bloodshot and red from forgetting to blink. He stares out at the vista of the swamplands at the edge of Surf City and waits for something. Is this still the work of the dream fan that was placed upon his windowsill in vicious vindication by Lois Swan against Edgar more than Barrick? It is hard to say. Edgar looks for Barrick still, looks, but he does not a hint. The forest is bigger than Edgar remembers. It seems to fold in on itself, and learned lessons of the evils of the swampland has caused him to tumble away from the swamps themselves during his journeys through it, through every inch of the town, seeking Varric. would not clap from exhaustion. In the Black family home, he keeps Varric's home for him, if for no other reason than to have something to do, to have something that he can believe in, that Varric will return, that he is not paying some terrible cosmic price for his own sins. But in the back of his mind, he can't help but think about how much it is just like the disappearance of rage all over again, how his indulgences, maybe even naming things important to his very soul, have come to hurt him. Every step is a little death, and it kills him just slightly. He does not weep, but his eyes blaze with worry and some tears. He is exhausted, dehydrated, and carrying a flashlight. The light of the flashlight just bobs at his side at about hip level, but he forgets to turn the light off, so it jerks with just a dim swath of pale gold upon the path which he trods. He hasn't really screamed for Varric in the woods place, doesn't know how far that voice would travel. He just keeps marching. He feels here as an interloper to something. He is afraid. He is afraid, but he cannot stop the motion of himself moving, going forward. There is nowhere to go but the swamplands. Oh, God, how he wishes the swamplands were a foul place with bubbling water and vast acres of mosquitoes, sliming, crawling things, large gnashing teeth and pinpoint reptilian eyes. But it is nothing that outwardly carnivorous or evil. The swamplands simply are, though there is something wrong with the swamplands. All agree, no matter how long they've been in Surf City, no matter how alive or dead, that there is an assessment of the swamplands that something is wrong with them, and so children are warned away from it especially. There is no time either in which a child that would fall into the swamp would be rescued. The swamplands, though, are fairly flat, save for the perverse trees that grow up. And so when Edgar arrives at the swamplands, finally run out of other places to go, he sees this mass of moss that is too tall, that is too much like a rock, but it is at the water's edge, and it is the only thing out of place. He sees it from behind, from far away, but it stands out, and it looks placed there. It looks something that has grown to be there, and it looks as though it might be shivering. Eric? Edgar's voice cracks from hollow use, from disuse. He no longer sounds like himself, nor does the shape make a motion to respond. Could be anything. But Edgar knows, no matter what it is not a rock. He keeps his stance far enough away in case it is a vicious beast, but close enough in case it really is, for whatever reason, Varric. Even if it is just Varric in name only. Come, rage beckons. There is a short time, Julie Cumberland. You must take your place or forfeit it. My place where? Can't escape Surf City. What do you think I've been trying to do all this time? Julie says, now exasperated just slightly, even though she knows it does no good. Eyes and ears are everywhere, the rage thing counters. Yes, there were trials. They are your trials. We find that you are now ready. We warn you to come before she comes. She? She is the mayor. Do not let her take your place in the cosmos. And then Rage disappears in the mist of the mirror, and Julie rushes forward closest as she's ever been to the cursed item. What? The mayor? Who is she? Julie shouts, and when there's no answer, She knocks on the side of the mirror, and the translucent glass which has caged the misty fog seems to tinkle and crack and then split into a million tiny pieces. She jumps back, but as the shards of glass fall to the floor, they evaporate as if their own smoke. There is a smell from the mirror. It smells like the first day of warm spring. It is the smell of oil paint on a carousel, of kettle corn. It is the smell of holiday calliope music, and the yearning of Julie's heart rips through her body, and she almost doubles over because of it. Hands grip the side of the mirror, and she senses in that touch that her chance is dimming. If she wants it, now is her time. There is motion in the water, causing Edgar to take just a step forward. Eric? Listeners, I promised myself when I started reading this broadcast that I would not interfere. You know I am not one to interfere, save to give little bon mots, tell you about mortal life, read you notes from the cosmic, and even trouble. But oh, listeners, this is not right what I'm to read you. Forgive me. The water begins to part, drifting away as if to make room for something, parting in a sluice as if a perversion of an old mythological tale of a conquering band. The figure is tall, that begins to rise from the swamp fields, stinking swamp land, tall with a robe that is white still in some places, long black hair, solid framed body, but a porcelain white mask bearing all the markings of a red fox face. It is a well-known ritual to do so, and it obscures a once cosmic visage. The creature does not cast a shadow yet. They seem almost too light for the universe, as though they are adjusting to having any form of physical weight. They are somehow simultaneously 2 and 3-dimensional, and the earth seems to groan as it gives birth to them. A moment before the swirling ceases, Julie steps through the mirror and disappears, and the tall figure in the fox mask reaches down and out, their hand gesturing to Varric to join them. Edgar hears a moan, barely one, the briefest of ones, but certainly from Varric's mouth. He knows that voice even in its tiredness, even so close to death as it seems to be, and then that hand, Varric's hand, slipping, shaking out of the moss as the moss that has draped and protected Varric starts to slide away. The top of Varric's back, the top of Varric's head. The creature continues to unsink itself from the green, watery muck, drifting upwards and forwards with expectation. And Edgar bolts forward. It is not just a run toward Varric. It is more than that. It is his whole spirit, ignoring his age, his aches, the unrelenting march of time across his body, and the toll of his addictions. It is beyond adrenaline or breath or anything Edgar knows of himself. And he is only moments away from reaching Varric. Moss-covered, nearly naked, knelt Varric, who is worshipping this thing from the muck that seeks contact, and Edgar knows deep within the fiber of his being that he needs to stop this now. And he nearly does. As Edgar tackles Varric, the mask-clad thing brushes Edgar's shoulder and just the barest edge of Varric's ribs. Edgar brings Varric into a hug as green slime and water and moss begins to encase them both. And dear listeners, this is where we end this season's tale of Surf City Donuts. Join me for next seasons when we'll learn more about the three siblings, the Black brothers of Surf City Donut. Surf City is an audio work of John McDonald and John McDonald Productions. It is meant for entertainment purposes only and is not meant to advise anyone on lifestyle, health, or spiritual philosophical issues of there or any time. All opinions expressed are held by the characters and in some cases the creator of Surf City and Surf City Donuts, John McDonald.